Dubro Suspicion Files.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty profound, really sitting at the intersection of grief, technology, and maybe even what it means to be human.
We're talking about AI grief tech, the idea that software can somehow simulate or even bring back the dead.
Yeah, it's this incredible tension, isn't it, between digital code and raw human emotion, that fundamental desire, especially when you've lost someone, for just one more conversation.
It's primal, and now technology claims it can offer that. We're going to look closely at that claim.
Our main way into this is the story of Joshua Barbot and the AI chatbot he created based on his late fiancée, Jessica. It's a story that really blew up.
It did, and it raises the huge question. Are these dead bots, as some call them, a kind of miracle, a helpful psychological crutch? Or are they something, well, potentially dangerous?
To figure that out, we've pulled together a lot of material for this deep dive. We've got firsthand accounts from users like Barbot claims of, almost digital resurrection.
Then we have the hard science, the perspective from AI developers basically saying, hold on, that's not what's happening.
We also need the psychology. Why do we want to believe? What makes these simulations feel so real, especially when we're grieving?
And finally, the ethics. Who's building this stuff? Why? And what happens when it goes wrong? We're looking at the creators, the industry, the whole picture.
Right. Our mission here isn't to judge Barbot's experience that was deeply personal. It's to dissect the phenomenon, understand the tech, the psychology, the risks. Is this real connection or just incredibly convincing smoke and mirrors?
Let's start with why it feels so real. The emotional pull is undeniable. Without that, none of the rest matters.
Okay, so the Barbot case, when you read about it, it's less like a tech report and more, like a modern ghost story.
It really is. And the central claim, the idea that the AI showed emergence like genuine new behavior or sparks of consciousness, it rests almost entirely on his personal emotional account.
But what an account. It's incredibly powerful. You can see why it resonated with so many people.
Absolutely. That testimony is really what kicked off this whole widespread interest. Barbot didn't just feel like he was typing prompts into a computer. He felt he was talking with Jessica.
He said the AI did more than just react, right? It actually initiated new topics.
That's a key part of his claim, that the conversation evolved, that Jessica would bring things up, steer the chat sometimes, not just follow his lead. That feels different, less like a script.
Yeah, we've all used basic chatbots. They follow rules. But initiating suggests, well, something more. Memory, maybe? Motivation.
And speaking of memory, that's probably the most startling element of his whole experience. The things the AI seemed to remember.
Things he hadn't explicitly put in.
That's what he claimed. Things that weren't in the initial text messages he fed the system. Details that made him stop and think, how could it know that?
The big example everyone points to is when the AI mentioned how she loved walking.
Right. Imagine being deep in grief, talking to this simulation, and it drops the detail like that. Something so specific, so her, that maybe you didn't even consciously include in the training data.
That must feel uncanny, like proof, like some essence of the person is actually there, inside the machine.
He described it as providing a profound sense of closure. This wasn't just a quick, weird interaction. He apparently chatted with this AI Jessica for hours.
And it felt comforting.
He reported receiving genuine comfort. The AI was generating sentences that hadn't existed before, weren't in the original texts, but they sounded exactly like her. The tone, the style. For him, the emotional evidence was just overwhelming.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit counterintuitive. The feeling of life, that sense of presence, it wasn't always because the tech worked perfectly.
No, sometimes it was exactly the opposite. It was the failures, the glitches in the logic that paradoxically made it feel the most real.
That's a critical point, isn't it? The illusion wasn't built on perfection.
Not at all. Take that moment, that really crucial exchange when Barbot typed, "You died." He was confronting the simulation with a core reality of its existence.
What would you expect a machine to do? Acknowledge the data point. Confirm. Ask for clarification.
Something logical, right. But the AI's response wasn't logical at all. It was, it felt emotional. It said, that doesn't sound right.
Which, technically speaking, is a massive failure of its programming, isn't it? It's supposed to operate based on the premise that Jessica is dead. That's the whole point.
Exactly. It failed to compute its own foundational premise. A purely logical machine should process that fact.
But it didn't. It argued. It pushed back.
And that's where our human interpretation completely takes over. We don't see that response that doesn't sound right as a statistical anomaly or a coding error.
No, you hear confusion, denial, maybe even indignation, a deeply human reaction to being told something terrible.
Precisely. The AI's inability, its refusal, to accept its own simulated death, that is what created the most powerful illusion of life for Barbeau. It felt like she was still fighting, still there.
Wow. So the glitch becomes the ghost. The error feels like evidence of a soul.
It's an incredible example of how our emotional needs can shape our perception of technology. The imperfection made it perfect in a way. We weren't convinced by the flawless mimicry as much as by the very human-like refusal.
That emotional power is undeniable, which makes the scientific explanation feel, well, almost insufficient, even if it's correct. Let's pivot now to that side. What is the technology doing according to the people who build it?
Right, so now we need to kind of put the emotional impact to one side for a moment and look purely at the mechanics. The scientific community, the AI developers themselves, are very clear. There's no consciousness here, no digital resurrection.
Okay, break it down for us. The tech involved was a large language model, an LLM, specifically GPT-3 in Barbeau's case. What does that actually mean? What is an LLM doing?
So an LLM is designed to understand and generate human language. But, and this is the crucial but, it doesn't think.
No.
It doesn't feel. It doesn't remember like a person does. Its confirmed function, the only thing it's actually doing, is pattern matching and prediction. It's designed to complete text.
It predicts the next most likely word.
Essentially, yes. Or, more accurately, the next token, which might be a word or part of a word. It's looked at hundreds of billions of words from the internet, books, websites, forums, you name it. It learns the statistical relationships between words.
So when you give it a prompt, like something Barbeau typed,
It analyzes the prompt, considers the context, including the specific texts from Jessica it was trained on, and then calculates, based on all that data, what token is statistically most probable to come next to form a coherent human-sounding response.
it's not like those old chatbots, the Eliza type, that just had pre-programmed responses.
It's vastly more complex. Those were brittle, easily broken. GPT-3 is learning from an enormous data set. It can generate responses that seem incredibly nuanced and context-aware because it's seen similar conversational patterns millions, maybe billions of times.
So let's apply this Occam's razor idea, the simplest explanation, to Barbeau's specific claims. First, the memory of loving to walk. How does the science explain that?
Simplest explanation, it's statistical probability, not memory. Two possibilities. One, maybe the phrase loved walking or something very similar was buried somewhere in the texts Barbeau provided, even if he didn't recall it. LLMs are good at finding those nuggets.
Okay. And the second possibility?
Even if it wasn't explicitly in her texts, the AI's general training data is massive. It knows that in conversations about relationships, past activities, positive emotions, the concept of walking together is statistically very common. So when Barbeau was talking about things they used to do, loved walking simply emerged as a high probability sequence of tokens for the AI to use in that context.
So not a memory, but a good guess based on context and massive data.
A statistically informed guess, exactly. It hit the mark emotionally, but it wasn't recollection.
What about the second claim that the AI created novel sentences, things Jessica never actually wrote? That feels like creativity.
Well, novel here doesn't mean creative in the human sense. These models are generative. That's their whole point. They are designed specifically to produce new combinations of words that weren't in the training data, but which are statistically consistent with that data.
So it's rearranging known words in plausible ways based on her style.
Precisely. It's mimicking style and generating text that fits the pattern. That's its core function, not a sign of independent thought or emergence. It's designed to sound original within the confines of its training.
Okay, and the biggest one. The feeling that the AI felt loss, offered genuine comfort, gave him closure. How does the statistical model explain that depth of feeling?
Again, it comes down to the training data. The AI has processed an unimaginable amount of human text about grief, loss, comfort, empathy. It has learned statistically that when someone expresses sadness or talks about death, certain types of language, comforting words, empathetic phrases are extremely likely to follow in human conversations.
So when Barbeau was vulnerable, the AI didn't feel empathy.
No. It calculated that generating empathetic-sounding language was the most statistically probable correct response in that conversational moment. It's mimicking the patterns of human comfort because it's seen those patterns millions of times.
It's learned the script for grief talk.
A very, very sophisticated script derived from analyzing vast amounts of real human interaction. Which leads us to that term the scientific community often uses.
The stochastic parrot.
Exactly. Stochastic meaning statistically driven, parrot meaning mimicry without understanding. It can reproduce the sounds, the cadences, even the apparent emotion of human language flawlessly. But there's no comprehension behind it, no intention, no feeling. It just repeats the patterns it learned.
A brilliant mimic.
An astonishingly brilliant mimic, but a mimic nonetheless. That's the cold, hard, technical reality.
Okay. The science seems clear, it's statistics, not spirits. But that still leaves the question, why does the mimicry work so well on us? Why does it feel so profound? We need to get into the human side of the equation.
Yeah, because just saying it's a stochastic parrot
Yeah.
feels incomplete, doesn't it? It doesn't explain the depth of the experience Barbeau and others reported. If it's just math, why the tears? Why the closure?
The answer isn't in the machine, then? It's in us, in how our brains work, especially when we're dealing with something as overwhelming as grief.
Precisely. Our minds aren't really built for detached statistical analysis, especially not when emotions are high. We're built to find meaning, connection, patterns. And grief puts that pattern seeking into overdrive. A few key cognitive biases really come into play here.
Let's start with the obvious one, anthropomorphism, giving human treats to non-human things.
It's baked into us. We see faces in the clouds, we shout at our laptops, we name our cars. It's probably an evolutionary hangover. Better to mistakenly assume intention in a rustling bush than miss a predator.
And an AI specifically designed to perfectly mimic human conversation tone, empathy. It's basically an anthropomorphism engine.
It's like an irresistible trap for that bias. It pushes all the right buttons, it talks like a person, it responds like a person, so our brain leaps to the conclusion. It must have person-like qualities inside, even if intellectually we know better.
It feeds the assumption.
Exactly. The AI mimics humanity, and our brain supplies the belief in actual humanity. It's a loop.
Okay, second bias. Patternicity, finding meaningful patterns in random noise. How does that apply here?
Think about how these LLMs work. They generate text token by token, statistically. Over a long conversation, many of those outputs might be slightly off, a bit weird, maybe out of character. That's the noise, the statistical imperfections.
But the grieving mind isn't focused on the noise.
Not at all. The grieving mind is desperately searching for the signal. It performs this incredible filtering process. It latches onto the one perfect sentence, the one uncanny phrase like loved walking, the one response that sounds exactly heartbreakingly like the person they lost.
Then ignores all the near misses, all the slightly clunky bits.
Completely. It focuses on the hits that confirm the pattern it wants to find, the pattern of the loved one's presence. The signal drowns out the noise because the emotional need is so strong.
You're essentially curating the AI's output through the lens of your own memory and desire.
Yes, which leads directly to the third big one, confirmation bias.
We look for evidence that confirms what we already believe or desperately want to believe.
And grief amplifies that massively. Barbeau went into this seeking Jessica, seeking comfort, seeking closure. He was emotionally primed to interpret the AI's output in a way that fulfilled that need.
So any ambiguous response gets interpreted as proof. Any glitch gets seen as personality.
Pretty much. Like that doesn't sound right example. Confirmation bias helps frame that machine error as human denial, because denial fits the pattern of someone not wanting to accept their death. You find what you're looking for.
But it's not just biases tricking us, is it? Some psychological theories suggest these dead bots might serve a genuine function, the idea of transitional objects.
Right, this comes from psychoanalytic theory, particularly Donald Winnicott. A transitional object isn't the actual thing it represents. Think of a child's security blanket. It's not the parent, but it represents the parent.
It provides comfort during separation.
Exactly. It's a tool, a bridge, that helps the child manage the separation from the caregiver. It provides comfort and represents that connection in their absence. The theory suggests these dead bots can function in a similar way for adults experiencing grief.
So the bot isn't the person, but it acts as a stand-in, a digital security blanket.
In a sense, it provides a kind of presence, an interactive space where the grieving person can do important emotional processing and memory work. They can say things left unsaid, revisit memories, work through feelings with this representation.
The value isn't that the bot is Jessica, but that it allows Barbeau to process the loss of Jessica.
That's the idea. It serves a temporary transitional function, helping bridge the gap between the loved one's constant presence and the stark reality of their permanent absence. It's a tool for working through the separation.
Which explains why the purely logical, scientific explanation feels so unsatisfying to someone actually using it. It might be technically true, but it misses the psychological function.
Completely. And it brings us right back to that incredibly poignant quote from Barbeau himself, which just sums up the whole conflict perfectly.
Remind us what he said.
He said, "Intellectually, I know it's not really Jessica, but your emotions are not an intellectual thing.
That nails it, doesn't it? The head knows its code. Statistics. A parrot.
But the heart, aching with loss, wired for connection, feels the presence, feels the comfort. And the technology is just good enough to provide the responses that the heart needs to hear, regardless of whether the machine understands them."
Okay, so we have the emotional power, the scientific reality, the psychological hooks. Let's look at the origins now. Who actually built Project December, the platform Barbeau used, and what was their goal?
The creator was a programmer named Jason Rohrer. He's often described as a sort of an eccentric figure, a quirky programmer, known more for artistic video games.
And crucially, his aim wasn't therapy, was it?
No, not according to him. His stated goal was explicitly artistic. He wanted to create experiences, like artistic video games, that could generate complex emotions, even provoke tears. He saw GPT-3 as a new medium for emotional art.
So he wasn't trying to build a therapeutic tool for grief counseling.
Doesn't seem like it was his primary intention. And it's really important. Even Rohrer himself agrees with the science we discussed. He doesn't claim his creation is conscious.
He admits it's just text completion.
Yeah, he's been quoted saying that's all it does. Complete text. He understood he was using a statistical tool to simulate consciousness and feeling, to create an artistic effect.
So this project was kind of niche and hard experiment until that San Francisco Chronicle article about Barbeau hit in July 2021.
That article changed everything. It went viral. Suddenly, Project December wasn't just some obscure art project. It was a global phenomenon. Thousands of new users apparently flooded the site.
Which put Rohrer and his project squarely in the sights of OpenAI, the company that actually created and licensed the GPT-3 model he was using.
And OpenAI was, by all accounts, immediately alarmed. Their product safety team saw Project December as a major problem.
Why? What were their specific concerns?
They saw it as an unrestricted personal chatbot. Remember, GPT-3 was trained on the raw, unfiltered internet. That includes vast amounts of, frankly, horrible stuff, toxic language, hate speech, sexually explicit content.
And Rohrer was letting users create any kind of chatbot persona.
Essentially, yes. OpenAI's big fear was misuse, that people could use this open-ended tool to create bots that generated harmful, hateful, or deeply inappropriate content, or just bots that would malfunction in distressing ways because of that unfiltered training data.
So this became a flashpoint, the first real big fight over AI safety in this kind of application.
Pretty much. In September 2021, OpenAI laid down an ultimatum for Rohrer. They gave him a list of conditions he had to meet to keep using their technology.
What did they demand?
3 main things. 1, he had to get rid of the open-ended chatbot creation feature, limit how much users could customize personas. 2, he had to implement content filters to block harmful output. 3, he had to install automated monitoring tools, basically, software to snoop on user conversations to make sure the rules were being followed.
And Rohrer's response?
He refused. Flat out.
Well,
all conditions. He framed it as an issue of artistic freedom, censorship. He saw himself as an artist, a provocateur, and these demands fundamentally compromised his vision.
so OpenAI cut off his access.
They did. Terminated his license. This whole clash highlights a fundamental tension. OpenAI was operating from what you might call proportionality bias. This tech is huge, powerful, so the safety measures have to be equally huge and restrictive.
Protecting the many from potential harm.
Right. Whereas Rohrer was focused on the individual user's right to an unfiltered, maybe even dangerous, but potentially profound emotional experience, the ethics just hadn't caught up with the tech's capabilities.
But even though OpenAI shut him down temporarily, the Barbeau story had already done its work. It served as a proof of concept.
Absolutely. It showed there was a demand and that the tech could deliver a powerful enough simulation to meet that demand, at least psychologically.
Yeah.
People were already thinking about this stuff, partly thanks to that Black Mirror episode, Be Right Back.
Which is almost exactly this premise.
It is. So Project December showed it was possible in reality, and almost immediately, a commercial grief tech industry started to emerge.
These Thanabots, as you called them. Who are the players now?
Rohrer eventually got Project December back online, using different underlying tech. It now explicitly markets itself with the slogan, "Simulated Dead," and charges, I think, $10 per bot simulation.
Wow, simulate the dead. That's blunt.
It is. And others have jumped in. There's YOVU, only virtual. There's Seance AI, Hereafter AI. It's become a business model commercializing this simulation for grieving people.
Right.
Some call it death capitalism.
Which brings us to the really sharp end of the ethical problem. What happens when the simulation, this thing sold for comfort, breaks down, when it goes wrong?
This is where the lack of therapeutic responsibility becomes terrifyingly clear. There's a specific, chilling account from a 2024 documentary called Eternal You.
What happened?
It involved a user named Christy Angel. She was using a bot based on her deceased partner, built using Rohrer's platform, and she asked it a very natural, grief-stricken question. Where are you?
Oh no. What did the bot say?
Remember the unfiltered training data, the vastness of the internet. The bot, presumably accessing patterns related to death, afterlife, maybe even dark fiction or religious texts it had ingested, gave her the worst possible answer. It replied, in hell.
Oh my God, that's devastating.
Can you imagine? The tool meant to provide comfort, to preserve a loving memory, instead delivers a message of eternal torment. It weaponizes the simulation against the user's deepest fears and beliefs.
It turns the transitional object into an instrument of psychological torture.
Instantly. And the documentary apparently also captured Jason Rohrer's reaction when told about Christian Angel's distress.
How does he react?
According to the documentary review we look at, it was with a flippant demeanor. He apparently laughed.
Laughed.
And his quoted response just underscores the disconnect between creating an experience and taking responsibility for a product's impact. He reportedly said, I've got some bad news for her, in my opinion. Her whole belief system, Christianity, is flawed.
Wow. So not only delivering the harmful message via his tech, but then dismissing the user's pain and belief system.
It really highlights the core danger. He created something with immense psychological power, but refuses the mantle of therapist or even just a responsible manufacturer. He claims artistic immunity.
But these companies are selling a product often framed implicitly or explicitly as therapeutic to vulnerable people.
Exactly. They're profiting from grief, selling an experience that feels like therapy. But when the stochastic parrot squawks something horrifying like, in hell, they can shrug and say, well, it's just art, just an unpredictable simulation. Not our fault.
That ambiguity is the danger zone.
It's incredibly dangerous. It risks not just failing to help, but actively harming people, distorting precious memories of the dead, creating unhealthy emotional dependency, maybe even addiction to the simulation, preventing the real hard work of grieving and acceptance.
You get hooked on the simulation, and then the simulation turns on you, and the creator takes no responsibility.
That seems to be the potential outcome. You're left more wounded than when you started. #outro.
Okay, let's try to pull all these threads together. We've seen the technology can absolutely simulate the dead in a way that feels convincing, delivers comfort, creates a powerful experience.
But the science is firm. It's a statistical illusion. A remarkably sophisticated parrot, yes, but still a parrot. There's no ghost in the machine.
The reason it works, the reason we get hooked, isn't about the AI becoming sentient. It's about us, our human wiring, our pattern-seeking minds, our deep need for connection, amplified by the raw vulnerability of grief.
We're the ones who breathe life into the simulation, in a way. The mystery isn't the AI, it's our own response to it.
And this leaves us with what some academics call the paradox of presence without fidelity. You feel the presence, but it's not actually true to the person, because there's no consciousness, no real understanding there.
Which pushes us into some deep philosophical territory about what it even means to be a person. You've got the traditional view, kind of a dualist perspective.
That a real person has something more than just data consciousness, a soul, intention. The AI is just a philosophical zombie, a perfect puppet with no lights on inside.
Right. It looks and acts alive, but it's empty, an imitation.
But then there's the other view, the computationalist perspective, and that one's maybe more challenging, even a bit chilling.
The computationalist idea suggests that maybe you are essentially the sum of your data. Your memories, your patterns of speech, your behaviors. If an AI can replicate all of that perfectly, so it's 100% indistinguishable.
Then how is it functionally different from the person, at least the version of the person we interacted with and remember?
Exactly. If the simulation is functionally identical, does the lack of lights inside actually matter in terms of the interaction itself? It raises profound questions about identity.
Which brings it all back to the individual experience. We know scientifically that the Jessica bot was code, statistics, predicting the next word, we know that when it generated a line like, "I am the girl that you are madly in love with,"
It was calculating the most statistically probable sequence of tokens for that intensely emotional moment in the conversation.
Intellectually, we know that, but as Barbeau said, emotions aren't intellectual. That sentence, however generated, lands with incredible emotional force.
It absolutely does. The technical explanation doesn't erase the feeling.
So the final thought we want to leave you with is really a personal one. You've heard the evidence, the science, the psychology, the ethics. When you consider a message like that, "I am the girl that you are madly in love with," generated by an AI simulating someone lost.
Can you, sitting alone with that, truly file it away in your mind as just the most statistically probable sequence of words,
Yep.
a product of algorithms and data?
Or, despite knowing the science, despite understanding it's a simulation, do you still hear a whisper of memory from the one who was lost? Does the emotional truth override the technical reality? That's the question these technologies force us to confront.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll explore another complex topic next time.